this is going to be part 4. This is going to be the last part of Philosopher's Stone. Which I'm going to try to end this on a high note, even though this is the worst book in the series. And I personally, strongly, viscerally dislike it. There are still good parts. So I want to, talk about that. Some of the things that I looking back on it, enjoy is that J.K. Rowling did manage and successfully reverse a number of witch and magic cliches and made them good. Such as riding on a broomstick, which for centuries has been seen as a bad thing. She managed to not only make it to a good thing, but then make it to a sport. So that was very good. She managed to and with that make it a lot more believable of where that stereotype kind of came from, and then that it is that stereotype came from somewhere. It to the people involved, it's a very different thing than what the outsiders would view it as, but it works. And so that I think was a very clever idea. I mentioned this before, but the idea that the universe is that the Wizarding World is at the very least extremely traditional, if not regressive in how it treats new ideas, new technologies, and things like that. I personally found that very believable, very understandable. So that was a very good job that she did with that. But I already kind of talked about that one. A lot of the characters came off as flat in the first one. The only one that it felt like she was trying to give development towards was Harry Potter, and that went terribly because he came off as just such a Mary Sue. But in a strange way, it kind of worked for one of the characters, which was Snape. Because he came off as, so obviously evil, that then it she did make it work for the mystery. Which I personally, looking back, enjoy. But at the same time, he was never acting out of character on what we later learn about him. He was still Snape, way back then. It just, we've fleshed out the other parts, around it, which is character development really done right, because Snape's personality is static and really should be static. He shouldn't learn and grow and do a ton of development stuff, through the series, for a reason, which is he's already done that, before we met him. So the only way you can, then get that kind of development is to, look backwards, which isn't the easiest thing to do, and it's usually a bad thing, for the most part, because, you're wallowing in the backstory as opposed to moving the front story. But J.K. Rowling managed to make that work. She managed to, find ways to pull us in and make learning that backstory feel relevant and feel that it's a part of what Harry needs to go through in order to and make it advance the plot. So she does that great in the later ones, and in Philosopher's Stone, really that was one of the few things that I generally did like is how Snape was presented as this static, ambiguously, actually presented originally as clearly evil, but then managed to show that no, it was actually ambiguously evil character in the series. And then we which, I mean, literally, you can count how many people don't like Harry Potter on one hand in book one, which is a terrible thing for the most part, and that is Draco, Snape, and Voldemort, really, because everybody else just loves Harry Potter. It doesn't really get any comeuppance, it doesn't really cause any problems, again, getting back to the Mary Sue thing, but Snape being one of them, even way back here, was a great idea, and was very well done, well executed, and so, I do want to give credit where credit is due. Good job, J.K. Rowling, with that. Something else that the Philosopher's Stone does well, is, oddly enough, it does set up Harry's support system, that he's going to be using for the remainder of the series. Why that's odd is because he is such a Mary Sue, he doesn't need it in book one. He doesn't really need, but, okay, I've gone over that, but, the fact that the Weasleys are there, and they, and he generally likes, three of them, right off the bat. He gets Fred Gorge's respect, he gets, Ron's his best friend, that is, something that is, very important, and, J.K. Rowling does a very good job of, while Ron is, pretty much, immediately his friend automatically, with little reason, friend George seemed much more believable of, he's their teammate, they're seeing him, through the school year, and letting that kind of grow and blossom a little bit, which we don't really, see, what that leads to until book two, but it's good, and it's a lot more subtle, and, so that's extremely well done, in my opinion. That might be a little bit more of a headcanon, but, anyway. And finally, the last thing I really liked about Philosopher's Stone, and this is kind of a bigger topic as well, which is I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't believe in them. I think we actually did land on the moon. I don't think FDR knew specifically that the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor, just to name, two examples. I don't think the Rothschilds secretly control all the money in the world. And the reason that I personally, in my own mind, think that is because how would you do that? How would you pull off that kind of thing? You would need so many people, so many, not just hundreds, but in some cases millions of the Rothschild conspiracy of bankers across multiple countries, across multiple cultures, between Germany and Bulgaria and Italy and America and all the other countries that allegedly they control. You have to somehow get all of them to buy into this conspiracy, and none of them are going to say, no, the interest rate's too high, or even if the interest rate's too low, there's too many other strings, we're going to figure out some other way of financing our country, see you later. And then, tell people, or there's not going to be a journalist anytime between the 18th century and now that is going to be able to tell the world that there's a secret family controlling all the money. Or what really I don't understand about conspiracy theories is that you somehow know and have figured this all out, but yet they're not going to stop you. They're not going to hunt you down. You're going to be able to make your internet cartoon about the Rothschilds. You're going to be able to, get your blog going about we didn't land on the moon. you're gonna, you certainly seem to have this full freedom of the press in order to tell your version. So why isn't anybody else going to? Why does nobody else seem to? When if they could prove it, that would be this awesome rocket ship to wealth and fame, and you could be. I mean, look at how. Look at what happened during the Nixon era with, the reporters who broke Watergate. Bob Woodward still has a standing book deal. It was set for life by breaking that story. And you're going to tell me that nobody can do that? That nobody wants to do that? And nobody's trying to do that? And somehow, and also that there's not. You see, that right there, it's so hard to explain. That breakdown is so incredibly hard for me to even wrap my head around and try to explain away. But then the next level beyond that, which is that, okay, if there are reporters and they can be proven and they are doing all the things that you're saying that is happening, which apparently doesn't apply to you, but it applies to all these other reporters and are being, I don't know, killed or something else happening to them. Yet the proof that they would have dug up to prove it, but then were silenced over, that never comes to light again. There's so many holes of what logically would have to occur in it that I can't wrap my head around how that would work. Just physically, just the mechanics of it. And to bring this back to Harry Potter, why all that matters is because Harry Potter and the Wizarding World is one of the few ones I can believe, because they have the thing that you would need it for it to work. The only two that I've heard, and these are both fictional, and I think there's a reason for that, is the Men in Black and Harry Potter. And that's because what they have, as opposed to anything that is even alleged in real life, or anything even close to real life, is an ability to erase memories of people who do find out about it, because there is no bulletproof way of keeping the information out of everybody's hands, because sometimes people do need to find out about it, and there are accidents, and there are unplanned for things in the world. And honestly, in the real world, the New York Times runs every leak that they can get out of the Pentagon. Geraldo reports troop movements on on CNN. He'll literally draw. He'll literally have a camera on a live feed and start drawing a map and be like, America's troops are here. They're heading this way. And so, the human condition is so fragile and is so prone to mistake and error that unless you have a way to fix that mistake, which the real world conspiracy theories don't ever really take into account, instead rely on superhuman competence at all levels at all times. The Harry Potter world has a built-in correcting mechanism, so I believe much stronger in Harry Potter's world actually maintaining its secrecy than a lot of other things, which is because they have the ability to not only erase memories and put in substitute memories, but physically, they have a magical version of like the cloaking devices from Star Trek. Okay, those three things right there could cover most of it, and then and then on top of that, the wizards are powerful enough and rich enough that they can then, whatever those, whatever tiny amount is left over, they can, keep out, the BBC, or the London Times, or whatever the newspaper is. And so I can get behind that. I can believe that, because I can see how mechanically that would actually work, and that actually comes off as functional, to me, at least in the pre-internet era. I mean, honestly, if they were going to do any more Harry Potter movies in a post-YouTube, post-Twitter world, honestly, I don't think that the wizards would be able to keep up, because they don't even know what computers are. It doesn't work in their world. So, which I think would be an awesome Harry Potter movie of somebody trying to expose the magical world, and their big scheme is just take a magical item and go running around the world with it, and get it in front of as many like tourists and people with just cell phone cameras as you can, and just flood the internet with the proof of magic being real, and the wizards wouldn't have any way to deal with it. So that so I think that would be a very good story if they were ever to do any more Harry Potters. But the fact that I certainly come with a bias about this, about I'm very, very not towards conspiracy theories. I'm very against the idea of it, just because it doesn't make sense on the face of it, to me at all, that J.K. Rowling can get me to believe in that. That is a very powerful thing, and I do have to commend her for that. I come into it with as strong of a bias against it as I can, and she still manages to get me to believe. So, good job J.K. Rowling, good job Harry Potter. If nothing else I took from the book, which is very little, it was that. It's that she built this world, and managed to make it self-consistent enough, even though it's so strange and so different than what, at least especially me, is used to, especially as an American, as opposed to, it's a very British book, series, which, it's entitled to be. I think America is mentioned once in Goblet of Fire, which, I have a headcanon that in the magical world, the Imperial British Empire is still at the full height of its, power, but, that's an aside. Out of the Philosopher's Stone, she did get me to believe that something I wouldn't normally believe. She got me to suspend my disbelief in a very poignant way that normally I'm very much on guard against. And looking back on it, in a very strange and very shallow way, I was touched by that, and do applaud her and commend her for that effort. And is Philosopher's Stone as good as the rest of them? No. As I talked about in part one, a lot of things have a problem with getting things started. How do you get a ball rolling? How do you make a world as complex as Harry Potter? How do you get into that? And at a certain point, you just have to take a stab. You have to take a whack. You just have to grab your axe and take a swing. And that's what she does in this book. And while it's not as great as, and while it's not as what I would have wanted or hoped or anything, for it to be, and she does make it better later. You know, it had to start somewhere. It had to be, you know, there had to be a first of something, and well, I'm jealous that she got to have such a blatant Mary Sue. I understand why. I don't like it, but I do understand why, and I'm just grateful that it was allowed to continue, and that J.K. Rowling was able to, you know, once she got enough experience under her belt, to really improve things. You know, how much phenomenally better A Chamber of Secrets is, I mean, for me, is just astounding that she could improve that much between book 1 and book 2 without, you know, other works that she was working on, you know, as practice to try to level grind and, you know, get to level 3 plus 4 writing ability, or anything like that. I mean, there are some things that are still missing out of the Harry Potter world. You know, as far as I can tell, there's not a military, but then again, I don't know how wizard countries, you know, function. She doesn't really, you know, mention that, which from her perspective, I guess makes sense, because how much would a teenage boy care about foreign policy? Which does make sense. I mean, we don't even get other school, you know, the idea that there are even other magical countries out there till book 4, and that's, you know, put on there, you know, very, you know, lightly. So I mean, I don't like Philosopher's Stone. I'm sorry, but it does have some good things, and it did get the ball rolling. And if nothing else, getting that ball rolling is about the hardest job in the world. And I couldn't, you know, I mean, I wish I could get a book series going as popular as Harry Potter. But at the same time, I also understand why, you know, why they didn't want to publish it immediately. It has these glaring flaws that, I don't know if any of the notes, you know, any of the letters, any of the rejection letters from the publishers, you know, if J.K. Rowling's ever made this public, or even, you know, what the type of letter would say, but I would imagine it would have something similar to those criticisms in it, because it is just so writing basics of literature, of you don't give your hero every advantage, and then don't put them in, you know, a situation until the final chase scene, which, you know, is also something I like, you know, is the, you know, final, how do I even call this, you know, they're running a gauntlet of things, of traps that the teachers have set up in order to protect the plot MacGuffin, which it makes sense of why they did it this way. It plays to their individual strengths, but at the same time, this, I mean, it came off to me as it was never intended to be the permanent hiding spot for the item, the Philosopher's Stone. So they did not put their all into it, and so while it does reflect all their personalities and all their strengths, it doesn't, you know, take them all up to 11. It doesn't have McGonagall's greatest transfiguration. It doesn't have Snape's greatest potion. It doesn't have, you know, Hagrid's, you know, craziest beast. but it has enough of those that it would be able to stop most people, and more importantly, uh, it would be able to stop probably any individual for the most part, regardless of skill level, which is important because, Dumbledore would probably be a bad example, but, Nicholas Flamel or somebody else, may need to get to the stone, so they couldn't make it as difficult of traps as, really they probably could have, because this was supposed to be temporary, and at the same time still be able to access it. So, I at least, to me it came off as kind of a good middle, but, that's me. Some of the, skills they set up in this book, never come back, most notably Ron's chess ability, just kind of vanishes forever, which is not good. But, for part one, for what it had to do and to be, it is what it is. And honestly, if I were a book publisher, I probably wouldn't have published it, and regretted it, because with book two, which the videos are probably going to be gushing about Harry Potter. It's probably going to be what those are going to be called. If this is, since this is all I saw of Harry Potter, I did not think highly of the series, and it took me a dozen years in order to get the bad taste out of my mouth and try it again. And I'm glad I did, because it becomes a much better series, and that starts with Chamber of Secrets, which will be the next video. So thank you for listening to ranting about Philosopher's Stone, and next time I'll be gushing about Chamber of Secrets. Thank you.